After we've chosen the recipe or style of beer that we want to brew, really the first step is to mill the grain. And so we do that using a silo and a chain disc conveyance, which brings our base malt in from the silo, drops it into the mill after weighing it. So it's a pretty sweet process. The grain is brought up into what's called a grist case, which is basically a silo that sits above our mash tun. When they're ready to drop the mash into the mash tun, basically what they're doing is taking the crushed grain and mixing it with hot water. That all ends up in the mash tun, which is basically a huge stainless steel vessel that holds the mashed or the crushed grain with hot water. The bottom of the mash tun has screens so that when mashing is complete, we can rinse the grain, keep the grain separate from the liquid that we've created, which is called wort. So after mashing is complete, basically the brewers are taking gravity readings, which measures the amount of sugar that's been extracted from the grain. And once they're happy with the extraction, they'll go ahead and start sparging, which basically means rinsing the grain out with more hot water. We boil the wort for about an hour, give or take, just again depending on the style of beer and how much volume we need. During the boil, at the beginning, we'll add hops, and the hops basically offset some of the sweetness from the sugars that we've created through the mash. Toward the end of the boil, we'll add some more hops, and late addition hops give us more flavor and aroma. We'll transfer the wort into the third vessel, which is a whirlpool, and that's just basically another stainless steel tank that the liquid hits at an angle and it spins really fast, creates a whirlpool. What happens with that is all the hop tube and proteins that have coagulated during the boil will collect in the center of that tank, and then we're able to pull a pretty clear liquid off the side of the tank when we're ready to run into a fermenter. We'll pass almost freezing water right next to the hot wort through plates, and there's an instant heat transfer that takes place and cools that wort down to room temperature, and we're able to get it into a fermenter pretty quickly. After we've got all the wort into a fermenter, we pitch yeast, and the yeast basically goes to work. The brewer's job is done. Now it's all science. And so the yeast, biology, the yeast eats the sugars that we just created, transfer it out of the fermenter into what's called a bright tank, and that's just a dish bottom or flat bottom tank where we carbonate the beers.